Howdy all, and that seems appropriate with a game in Nashville yesterday. Before we get into the hockey talk, I just wanted to, and believe me, I'm not a big NBA fan at all, but it was interesting to see the contrast of the draft lottery that the NBA held and the NHL held. First of all, I don't think that there were any players representing teams at the NHL.
No, there was. Joel Embiid was there for the Sixers.
No, for the NHL. For the NHL.
Oh, for the NHL. Sorry.
I don't think there were.
No, not this year. No.
And there were a few players representing teams at the NBA draft lottery. Plus, I have to say, these convoluted sort of conditional deals that the NBA allows made things very, very confusing, where I think it was Sacramento could have lost a pick if the pick would have been in the top below the top 10, and then the Lakers could have lost a pick in 2017 or in 2019 if they hadn't gotten the top three pick in this draft. It was very, very, there were all these conditions, and it sort of took away from the excitement. But the weirdest thing, Russ, was that the Boston Celtics, who are in the Eastern Conference Final starting tonight against the Cavaliers, get the first pick in the draft. And it's because of the Brooklyn Nets being utterly stupid and trading, I think, 3 or 4 first-round picks a few years back for aging Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and now that's going to basically restart the Celtic. I mean, the Celtic franchise is pretty good right now, but they're going to get a franchise-level player.
They're in the Eastern Conference Finals, and they got the first overall pick. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And the funny thing is, I'm trying to think back in terms of hockey when a really, really good team got a top pick, and I'm talking about like a team. Tampa Bay was a good team, but they had a bad year, and they draft Jonathan.
That's what usually happens in hockey. I can't think of a really good team that got a top pick that was deep in the playoffs. I mean, I guess maybe the closest would be how deep in the playoffs. Well, they didn't get the top pick. No, I can't think of one.
Well, not even the top pick, but just a high pick. It's like, when
the Leafs traded the Bruins, how deep did the Bruins go that year?
That was 2000. That was the year before that. No, it was 2008 that they made the Kessel deal, I believe. 2009, and the Bruins won the cup in 2011. I don't know what they did the previous year. I don't think was that the year. Was that the year that they? Well, 2010 was the year they had a 3-0 lead and lost to Philadelphia in 7 games.
Okay, so I mean they were pretty far in the playoffs, so they just.
Right. Right, but they were a playoff team. They were a playoff team and got the second pick. You have to think,
as close as you can get.
Yeah, you have to think back to the 70s if you remember, and I can't remember his name, if it was George McGuire, whoever the general manager was of the LA Kings. He must have been either Sam Pollock had pictures of whoever the GM of the LA Kings and the California Golden Seals. Or he was just, it was unbelievable. The Canadians would get like the first pick in the draft for like Ralph Backstrom, right? And they would draft Guy Lafleur. They would get, they'd be the best team that almost won a Stanley Cup or had just won a Stanley Cup, and it had the first pick in the draft. So, but that does,
that was the semifinals with the Bruins and the Flyers. That's what I was having that battle in my mind. That's right. The Flyers beat the Habs in the Eastern Conference Finals, but still semifinals with a high pick. That's as close as I can get.
Yeah, having to go back 45 years, 46 years is, I can remember it, but it's very infrequent, and normally, the worst teams get the best picks, but sometimes something like this happens. But yeah, it's just gonna end. The quality NBA teams of our youth, it was always the Lakers, the 76ers, and the Celtics. And last night it was Celtics 1, Lakers 2, and 76ers 3. So I just thought
but here's the thing though. Now, in my youth before that, it was the Nets. And obviously we don't see anything good out of the Nets when they do stupid things like they're doing today. And yes, I know they reached the finals once with like Alonzo Mourning or something, right? But
Yeah.
That's as close as they got.
With Jason Kidd as school. Yeah.
And that's it. I mean, it's been a very fleeting time for the Nets ever since post Dr. J. So I give the Celtics credit. I still hate the Celtics from my Knicks days. I don't wish them any ill will, though. Like, I don't care. I will say this. The Knicks got the 8th overall, right? Which is probably the worst you could do for as bad as they are. Yeah. And I will say this. I enjoyed what Walt Frazier wore, but he's got better than that.
Oh, my God.
I don't think Clyde brought it. I don't think Clyde brought it.
It looked like the upholstery from a couch. It was terrible.
Clyde, listen, I've been watching Walt Frazier my entire life. He could do better. That's all I'm saying.
Well, he could do better than those Just for Men commercials he does with Keith Hernandez, too.
Hey, guys got to make a living. Don't kill him for that.
Okay. All right, let's start the show. Peter Tessier will be joining us in any moment, so we'll just acknowledge him beforehand. But hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, May 17th, 2017.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, we had a game last night in Nashville, and my ears are still ringing from the loud noise at the Bridgestone Arena.
I thought maybe from Keith Urban. I'm not going to go there again.
Please. Although it was very nice to see Nicole Kidman in the crowd. That just brightened my day, Russ.
There you go. I'm glad that did.
Mrs. Keith Urban. But the Preds, on the strength of 2 goals in the third period, win a 2-1 victory over the Anaheim Ducks. Some controversy in this game, a lot of disallowed goals, some questionable situations. First of all, give me your overview on the game. What did you think?
The overview of the game was good. I thought Kessler maybe overdid it in his role, and he needs to maybe dial it back a little bit and get back to playing his game rather than trying to really just destroy Johansson. And, so I think he needs to dial that back. I think that first one where the goal was off the moorings with the puck going in.
Yeah, that was a goal. That was a goal.
That was a goal.
And I'm really surprised that because they showed the rules regarding allowing or disallowing that during the second intermission. And it was pretty clear that, the puck was going in, and I think it was Ekholm who had been knocked down, but he slid into the right post and he knocked it off its moorings. Yep. And if you see the puck was maybe a couple inches outside the crease going in the direction and had passed over the goal line. Yep. as the net was coming off its moorings. So you could say if Ekholm hadn't knocked that off its moorings, it would have gone in. So by the rule, it should have been allowed, but strangely enough, they didn't allow it.
And that hurt. That definitely hurt the Ducks. There's no question. Don't you think?
Yeah. Oh no, I think so. They get the goal, and first of all, the goal by Perry.
Well, they didn't get that goal. They should have gotten that goal, and then
Right, but the goal by Perry was not a good goal.
No.
I'm taking into consideration that if they would have scored that goal and then the Perry goal would have happened, then being up 2-0.
Yes.
That would have deadened that crowd significantly, and then right. But the Perry goal was a bad goal. Pekka Rinne, you can't really complain because he only allowed 1 on the night, but he came off the post and it went off the inside of his skate. Perry's a grizzled veteran of many Stanley Cup playoff games, so he knows that, maybe he can bait the goaltender to come off the post, and he did. But, until the third period, until that rush, that might have been the difference, that goal.
Yeah, I think it was. But here's the thing. I think we're getting too nitpicky with goalies. I tell everybody, every goalie in this era now gives up 1 or 2 bad goals a game. They do. The question is, will they give up a third? And you hope that they don't give up a third. And that's the she's deaf, so she can get pretty loud. So that's the big thing is don't give up that third. I'm going to put her outside for a minute, but talk about the shot clock, and I'll be right back with that.
Yeah, we're doing it on the fly here, folks. This is the thing, and I caught wind of this after the game. The commentary on social media, especially from the analytic, what I would term the analytics crowd, was very. Sort of and they've always been anti-Randy Carlyle back to his days in Toronto. Toronto at that point was not a team that you would call a possession team. They allowed more shots than they got. And Randy Carlyle, there was a gap of about 15 to 18 minutes during late first to early second where Anaheim did not have a shot registered. And Carlyle was critical of the fact that, maybe at that point there weren't any shots recorded, or I know that there was a span of time where the shots were even, and then all of a sudden in one flurry, Nashville, he thought had one shot, and the shot clock gave him 5 shots. I mean, the thing is, that contributes to the statistical imbalance that most analytics people will say is the reason why, their main.
Well, here's the thing, and if you stop it there, we had that subject this week on Hockey Prospect Radio on Sirius where we were talking about the analytics and the stats, and I brought that up, how sometimes you wonder how home team scoring and home team statistics, especially we were talking about juniors, how that really affects the numbers that you're trying to use as gospel data. And Randy Carlyle sort of highlighted that for us in a way, and it's something that you have to look at.
Yeah, and see, the thing is, I think that the reason that I think it's pertinent right now is it sort of feeds into this narrative, regarding Carlyle. And I've ever since he got hired and then fired by the Leafs, I've tried to really defend Randy Carlyle because I said, it's not analytics, it's not that he's a Neanderthal in terms of a head coach. I think he's fairly modern in his approach. The problem is that in Toronto, he didn't have the right combination of talent. And I think in Anaheim, he actually does. And if you look at that game last night, I mean, yes, and even Carlisle admitted this, around the early part of the second period through the end of the game, Nashville was the more dominant team. But Anaheim had a number of opportunities early. They had, I think, the better scoring chances, and either they shot wide or Rene stopped them. And it was just, I mean, I think it was sort of a two halves of one game where Anaheim dominated the first part and then Nashville carried it forth for the rest of the game. But, that happens. It does.
At the end of the day, I think Nashville's defensemen played better than Anaheim's. They had a lot more shots. They have something like 18 shots, their defensemen. It was something
something obscene.
And so they outperformed them. And so, that happens. It's funny because, everybody's like, well, only 2 more games and Nashville goes to the Stanley Cup. And it's like, people should slow the roll on this. This is not an Anaheim team that is going to roll over and die. They only lost 2-1. Even people that are being critical about John Gibson, I retweeted Brian Boucher, who follows me. He's a smart man. He follows me on Twitter. And and he talked about how, hey, other than running Gibson, that's their best game plan other than taking away his eyes, for screens, because he's been having a good series. He only gave up 2 goals. So, again, I think we get a little crazy sometimes. And
Peter, first give me your general overview of the game, because Russ and I both did, and just going forth on one of the points he just mentioned. It seemed to be, and it's always the plan of every team in the playoffs, crash the net, go to the net, try to get, try to impede the goaltender, either his vision or try to make contact. And I think it was 2 disallowed goals that Nashville had last night. The Zolarchuk one was pretty, I thought, blatant. I mean, that was the lesser of the 2. The other one I thought was more blatant. Was it Ekholm, I think, that crashed the net on that one? Yeah, it was Ekholm. So what are your thoughts on the game?
I think it's a perfect strategy. I think they had to. You need to make things a mess in front of Gibson, hands down, and that's been seen throughout the playoffs. Create confusion in front of him, and look what happens. But the funny thing about that second disallowed goal was he actually worked to get away from him. It was the defenseman who got beaten, who then had to pinch him out and push him around, who actually pushed him back into Gibson. He did the right thing. He reached out, he ran across, he got through. It's just that the way the defenseman who got beat was the one who drove him backwards. So, it's kind of a funny thing. it is interference. Like Gibson was interfered with, but was he interfered with deliberately? Yeah, I don't know about that. I think he did everything he could to get away from careening into him and wiping him right out. But the forces of nature, as gravity works, say you can't do that. Mm-hmm. I have no problem. Like I can see it both ways, but I think if this is a continuing theme that we're going to see is teams try and do this, the NHL's got to actually really revisit this rule again, because again, we're living in the gray zone, and the gray zone needs to be cleaned up to the black and white zone. Either don't allow any contact, or allow, or don't allow any in the
no holds barred. Yeah, no holds
right,
barred.
like no holds barred, or let it all go.
Yeah,
but as for the game, is your original question, Mike? I thought Nashville drove the play really well. I mean, the defense was in on everything. That's just so much fun to watch. Watching Ryan Ellis play is something else. The kid, I mean, he's really come out to be, is this his breakout year? Probably. Like, is this his coming out party?
He didn't have a chance to not have a breakout year. That's the thing. This is his first chance to actually show everybody, hey, this is what I can do. Now, has he been getting better every year? Yes.
Yeah, and it happened, and now the right things are happening for Nashville, and lo and behold, everyone's talking about Ryan Ellis. And that's great, But I don't think Anaheim played a bad game. I just don't think they played well as Nashville did. That was it. It's a 2-1 game. How can you? It's a 2-1 game.
Everybody's making a big deal because it's the third game, but you know what? You could show me all the stats you want for what happens in Game 3, but we could point to many, many times now where it doesn't matter all the time. So I don't put much stock in it.
And I know I commented on this last night, Russ. The thing was, I mean, when a goaltender is so blind to what is going on that he doesn't even move when a goal is shot, like Gibson did in Game 2 with that one goal that Neal scored, the same thing happened on the winning goal last night. He got lost in the screen. He didn't know where the puck was, and the puck pops out to Yossi, and he buries it into an open net with Gibson standing there wondering what the hell happened. Gibson played a great game, but that kind of goal is sort of disheartening, especially when a team was 1-1 late in the third. I mean, I thought that thing was going into overtime, and in a sense, it was in overtime, and that goal won the game because Anaheim really didn't have another great chance after it. But I mean, Gibson really, I mean, he played well, but that was a play that was very costly. And if he does that one more time, I mean, there's no margin for error here. If he does that one more time, that might be the death blow to the Ducks.
All right, but you want to know something? His save percentage in the playoffs is .924.
I know.
Like, you are getting ridiculously nitpicky here. Like, I can't even.
I know.
I can't even comment on it because anybody who wants to say anything about Gibson's goaltending, he's got a .924 save percentage. I mean, you can't do a lot better than that at his age.
Russ, all I'm saying is that, like, in the first round when Toronto was playing Washington and Freddie Anderson lets in that goal in overtime to Tom Wilson, even though he had a pretty damn good game, all everybody remembers is he let a goal in short side high to Tom Wilson, and that was the
Mike Richter let one in like that too in the playoffs, like a 30-40 foot shot. He eventually won a Stanley Cup. It meant nothing in his career.
But Dan
Cloutier let one in from the red line, and where's he?
Dan Cloutier was a better fighter.
We've all got examples.
No,
right?
but he was a better fighter than a goaltender.
Yeah, and Alan Bester let one in 1990 from over the blue. Never mind. All right, let's move on to the other series. That's we have Game 3 occurring at the Canadian Tire Center in Canada, in beautiful downtown Canada, Ontario, as the Senators and Penguins take. Yes. Now the news came out that Brian Rust will not play, Patrick Hornquist will not play, and Justin Schultz will not play. And Russ, there was an indication that veteran Mark Streit might be playing tonight.
Yeah, Streit was out on the ice. I think it was a smart move. I think that when you think about it, if you want to have a seventh defenseman, you literally could just have him out there for the power play. And the one thing I can tell you from covering Mark Streit and still looking at him very closely this year, his shot is still great, and his ability to move the puck on the power play and get the puck in the offensive zone quickly is still very good. It's everything else that's not so great, like his catch-up speed, his 5-on-5 defensive play, but they could work around that. And so this is the perfect way to not miss Justin Schultz because you'll have Mark Streit on the power play. I would do it. I wouldn't even hesitate.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Streit's got to come in, and they've got to adjust for him, and they've got to look for him to get that quick outlet pass and play to what he can do, so he's not left dangling in a situation where he's got to, lack of a better term, defend for himself in a bad situation. They want to get the puck out quick, and Penguins are going to have to adjust to make that move.
Yeah, I mean, on the Ottawa page, I mean, it's going to be status quo. I haven't heard any kind of lineup changes right now. I mean, I honestly think that Ottawa's game is better suited to playing on the road, especially that boring 1-3-1 trap that they play. If it's a tight game, you're going to have the crowd. They'll be in it, but they'll be tense. And if they fall behind, then they're going to have to come out of that 1-3-1 to try to score. But I think when it's even, you're aggravating your home crowd. They're going to be really uptight and expecting a team with Erik Karlsson and a few offensive weapons to sort of step it up. And I think if they try to do that and play out of character, then I think it's advantage Pittsburgh, especially with the weapons that they still have. Russ?
Oh, okay. I thought it was for Peter. Yeah, I agree.
No,
okay.
I agree. I think Ottawa has to play a certain kind of game because they can't match firepower with Pittsburgh. It's that simple. And even though Pittsburgh's defense is still, got this question marks, I mean, what's Ottawa got after Karlsson that is so grand, right? You've got maybe a resurgent Phaneuf, you've got Ceci, and then where does it go from there? I mean, Ottawa has to employ a strategy that's going to allow them to stay in the game, because if they let a game get away from them, there's no catching up with Pittsburgh. You're not going to come back. Particularly if Pittsburgh gets a 2 or 3 goal lead, you're not going to get into a horse race with them and try and catch up. You've got to hope something good happens and stick to the plan that slows them down and hope that you get the breaks that you want.
If you do a search for Ottawa on Twitter, the next word that comes up is boring. It's really kind of funny, but that's where we're at. And I think that Pittsburgh has figured it out. I'll be very shocked if Pittsburgh loses this game. I actually will be shocked if Pittsburgh doesn't win by more than 2 goals. I think they've figured things out. Yes, they're a little weakened, and that could hurt them a little bit as far as the injuries. But I think now they're going to have Ottawa's number a little bit in this game. That's what I'm expecting.
Well, I'm a little surprised, and not that I expected them to put Sestito in the lineup, because I didn't think they were going to do that. They didn't do that in the series after Crosby got whacked. And
oh wait, Tom Sestito just did a Players Tribune article. Put me in, coach. No kidding.
Oh,
jeez. Okay, John Fogarty. But no, but with Phaneuf laying out Rust. With I think Ottawa, having to be more physical against Pittsburgh to sort of get things done. Now, how far are we away from Sullivan going down that road?
We're still far. I mean, Chris Kunitz was ramping it up. He's certainly a guy that can do that. He's not scoring like he used to. He's not even close. So no. I think Kunitz could play that role. I don't think they're going there yet. I think they have to be down 3-1 to even consider it.
No, Peter, do you think that, because I think that's a desperate move. Do you think, even though he's played great in the playoffs, that if they fall behind, say Ottawa sweeps in Ottawa and they go back for Game 5 down 3-1, do you think that that's the cue for Matt Murray?
It all depends on the score, right? It's the same argument of Gibson losing 2-1. If they lose 2 games 2-1 or 3-2, and there's no brain fart goals or some sort of stupid event that's caused by Fleury, how do you not? The only reason you would do it is because you need some sort of psychological shot in the arm for the rest of the team to say, hey, the coach is putting in the backup now, or the coach is putting in the former starter who was the backup, or blah, 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 however you want to phrase it. If that's what Johnson thinks is necessary to get the rest of his team going, well, probably being down, 3-1 in the series is the time to do it. But that's a desperate move.
Yeah.
That's a desperate move.
One little thing here, quote from Bobby Ryan regarding the Senators' boring play. I think our fan base is on board with it, and we have to recognize the brand that we have to play to be successful. Critics and ratings can be damned at this time of year. It's all about going out and getting the job done, and we've been able to do that. We're going to continue to do that. I'm sure that
he's right. I would say the same thing as a player.
Sure, but I'm sure Gary Bettman is really happy to hear say ratings be damned when it comes to playing a certain style of hockey.
Gary Bettman didn't care in 2003 when it was Minnesota and Anaheim playing in the Western Conference Final, and no one played more boring hockey than the Minnesota Wild. So
except maybe the 19.
You play to win, and you do whatever you have.
I think the Devils beat them, but
I was gonna say except for the 1995 Devils, and I think they were both coached by the same guy, Jacques Lemaire. Just a number of little stories here, a number of things that we're going to check in on over the next month or so in terms of the expansion draft and some draft previews and the rumor chart that Eck put up yesterday. There was some news yesterday that I mentioned at the end of the show, and not that I want to talk specifically about the two players that the Leafs signed, but just the trend of what is going to may be happening in the league, and I think it's reflective of the the ever slowing death of free agency in terms of unrestricted free agents and teams being able to get talent in that way. The Leafs signed two young Swedish free agent defensemen, undrafted free agent defensemen, one named Kalle Rosen and the other named Andreas Borgman. Borgman is 21. He was at the SHL Rookie of the Year. Both are NHL size. Borgman, I think, 6', 210, good skaters. No guarantee that these guys are making the Leafs. I think they'll be given a good look at training camp, but the advantage here is, 23, 21, they're ahead of the developmental curve than drafting somebody at 18. And as they're on their entry-level deal, they can be moved freely back and forth between the NHL and the AHL. So it provides organizational depth. Now, what I'm looking at here is other teams beside the Leafs going down this road. I mean, Russ, we've heard about Antipin. We've heard about the Rangers signed Berg Glazov. There are going to be other free agent forwards, defensemen, goaltenders signed probably in the next couple months. Teams are going to have to go down this road more and more because right now there's just not a lot out there in free agency.
No, there's not. But again, there's these guys. It's like you said, it's not a guarantee. They're slightly ahead of college players when they come out and ready to go to the AHL, or some are ready to go to the NHL. They're around the same age. I'd say the talent level is a little bit higher, but not much. So will they make the Leafs? If this was 2 years ago, yeah, they'd have thrown them in there. Now, maybe not. So fans definitely could say, hey, it's nice that we're doing things, but don't get overly excited. Like, you got to really wait it out. I think Borgman, I pointed out yesterday, was like the 36th ranked European player in his draft year. When you're 36th ranked European player and don't get drafted, that's pretty much expected. Like, you can go down that European list, and most drafts you're probably not getting past 10 or 12, maybe 15 on that list. So when you're 36th, there's a reason he didn't get drafted, and maybe he's just a late bloomer. That does happen. And so we'll see. The SHL is definitely a good league. It's not the NHL. We know that.
Right. And Peter, I think that the trend here, because I mean I did a little bit of research on Borgman yesterday when when it came out that his Swedish club team announced that he was heading to the NHL, and I had a feeling it was going to be Toronto and wrote about that. That there were a number of teams interested in him and thought that he could be an NHL player. And apparently his agent was selling him as a lock as a top four, and most teams think he's a bottom pairing guy. But if you can get a bottom pairing guy on an entry level deal for 2 years at less than $1 million, I mean, it makes sense on the cap. It makes sense for your depth, and it's good. You can not worry about signing this guy, and if it doesn't work out, you can move him to the AHL and he can develop down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you wonder why there aren't more GMs, Kevin Shoveldale, who have a disaster on the bottom pairing, who aren't looking at that for depth.
Well, you don't know that they're not looking. They're just not getting the players. They could be.
Exactly. You know what, Russ, and that's, you raise a really valid point, not turn this into a Winnipeg-centric thing. That is a topic of conversation here of people just assume they're not looking because nothing's happening. And that's a very good point. But, let's rephrase that then and say more teams should be being far more aggressive about it and putting out their best sales pitches and saying, here's where your opportunities lie, and really saying it's not wasted energy to be aggressive, because at some point you have to do something. And these are the kind of guys that every organization needs, whether they bounce back and forth between your farm team and your regular team. It's when injuries hit defense that everything goes to heck.
Maybe Winnipeg's making a big play for Will Butcher. Maybe they realize, hey, Borgman's not as good as Butcher. We're going to go all in on Butcher. Maybe we'll try and use Trouba as a lure for Butcher, another American defenseman. And, maybe they'll go that route.
Yeah, exactly. But Mike, to your point, like GMs should be looking at these things and going, they're cheap. There's some upside, and the downside isn't that down.
Right, and this is ironically how the coin has flipped over the last couple of years. A couple of years ago, people didn't want to go to Toronto because too much pressure, the media attention, all this. Now Austin Matthews is there, Nylander is there, Marner is there. You got Babcock there. They obviously need help on defense, and I think part of the mix here was these two Swedish defensemen. There are a number of Swedes in the Leafs organization. The history of Matt Sundin and Boris Salming, fine, but Nylander, who's 20 years old, is also on that team, and so it's a fellow countryman, somebody they probably know playing against one another in lower leagues or as young kids. And the prospect of a team on the rise that needs help at a certain area. That's why, Russ, I think, there's still a chance, even though they signed a couple European free agents, that the Leafs will be heavy in on Butcher because it doesn't cost them anything. It's like it costs them an entry-level contract.
I think like 5 or 7 teams be heavy in on Butcher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. I honestly, the 23 teams that aren't are stupid because it's free money. It's a guy who won the Hobie Baker who's going to walk and be a UFA, and all you have to do is provide an opportunity and a reasonable path to him having a successful NHL career, and there's a possibility that he would sign with you. So I think teams like Buffalo that need defense, and then supposedly they're in on Antipin, but I think they need more. They should be really scouring the KHL, the Finnish league, and the SHL for help, because that's the way to go.
Yep, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, few news and notes here. GM of the year was announced yesterday. 3 names: Pierre Dorion, the general manager of the Ottawa Senators; David Poile, the GM of the Nashville Predators; and Peter Chiarelli, the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Okay, first of all, 2 of these guys, if you would have mentioned them as possible GM of the year candidates around, I'd say August 1st of last year, people would have laughed in your face. Poile off of the Jimmy Vesey situation, and Peter Chiarelli after trading Taylor Hall for Adam Larson. I still don't think that they had good years. The teams had good years. I still don't think they're deserving of GM of the year.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, again, it's like anything else. When, like, Joe Torre would win a World Series, he was a brilliant manager, and when he didn't, was he any good? It's like that's how you are year to year as a GM. Those guys know the job. If it were me, I'd vote for Dorian for a couple reasons. He was always a really good talent evaluator for players, right? Mm-hmm. And I've spoken to Pierre more than once on my show in person, and he's a really engaging guy, really passionate. But he found the right coach too, and so not only has he scouted good players and made good trades. The Brassard trade has worked out well for him, but he found the right coach. And so that's a really big deal, and that's where I put him ahead of even the other guys, because, like, if he would have talked to you at the beginning of the season, you would have said, hey, look, I think you're coming in 30th, and he would have been like, oh, wow. But no,
you had to get it in there, didn't you, Russ? You had to get it in there.
But seriously, he probably wasn't thinking we're going to get this far. He probably was thinking, hey, I hope to make the playoffs with this coach, and we're on the right track, and he's getting way more than he bargained for. Nashville was already a team that you would consider in that mode. And really, Edmonton just needed a little steerage. Now, I like Chiarelli. I never thought he should be killed in any way, shape, or form. But I know that he had that reputation from other fan bases, but I thought it was irrational. But I would give it to Dorian if it were me.
I mean, of that list, yes, I'd give it to Dorian. But my contention is that two of the names shouldn't be on that list. But Peter, what do you think of the list? And
you know what? I appreciate the Dorian thing. I lean towards Poyle more. But you know, the part is I think like in a regular season, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about now. We're talking about what happened in the regular season. Nashville underperformed. Like they should have been a better team than what they were. Great that they're peaking now, but they underperformed.
Yeah.
However, Chiarelli I think is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
He got a generational player back for a full season, and he got amazing goaltending that they haven't seen in Edmonton as longer than Winnipeg hasn't seen.
He did sign that guy. Though. He gets credit. He did.
No, his credit is the Hall for Larson trade. That's nothing to be praised over. That's taking a massive risk that didn't really hurt you, but it didn't really boost you. Yep. What boosted you was Talbot and McDavid. And a healthy Oscar Klefbom.
Yep.
That's what you've already put into place. The thing with Poyle is, and I saw Travis Yost make a comment about this. He made a trade that 200 hockey men wouldn't have made. He dumped a liability. He got a better player back, and he managed to convince someone to do it. That's more than trade. Like if you come around and around the league and go, and Chiarelli calls you up, and you've got an arguable 2 to 4 defensemen in Larson, depending on which team you're on, and you say, well, I'll give you Taylor Hall. You've sent the paperwork before Chiarelli can hang up.
Okay, but here, think about this though. Think about this.
That's not a difficult trade to make.
Here's the Talbot trade though. The Talbot trade, they gave up their 57th, 79th, and 184th pick and got back a 209th round pick and Talbot. That's a pretty good trade. I know people were saying, hey, that's a great haul for the Rangers, but that's a great trade for a number one goalie.
But that's outside the window here of what he's being nominated for GM of the year. It's only for the calendar year. So what I'm saying is here,
that's fair.
On top of the Hall for Larson deal, he doubles down by overpaying Milan Lucic for 6 years or 7 years.
It's working right now. Like if you're going to go with just the today lens, it's working today. It might not work 3 years from now, but it's working today.
Yeah,
I don't think it worked that well. I think if you took a survey, Russ, you'd see most people say, "Yeah, you Lucic for another what? How long is it? 6 more years?"
I think it's 6 more years.
Wait. He did keep McDavid injury free. He did.
Well, and okay,
that's part of his job.
Yeah, the Chris Russell signing. The Chris Russell signing solidified their defense, but see that's the problem here. My definition of GM of the year. Obviously it has to do with the results on the ice, but it also has to do with the kind of contracts you got players to sign. And in that vein, I would have given Steve Yzerman a nomination for GM of the year.
Me too.
Stamkos, Kucherov, and Hedman all signed, not losing anybody.
Wholeheartedly.
It was a miracle, and I'm shocked.
I don't disagree with that, but at the end of the day, if you would have said at the beginning of the year what kind of regular season were the Ottawa Senators going to have, and I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs either. Compared to the other two teams, they have way gone way further than all of us thought.
Like I said, of this existing list, my vote would be with Dorian because, like I said, I picked that team to be dead last because I thought that they sucked. And I'm shocked that they've made the playoffs, and I'm shocked that they've succeeded. And I give all credit to Guy Boucher, and they've gotten great performances out of some players that I didn't think were up to it. But I'm still not convinced they're going to beat the Penguins. Anyway, all right, let's move on to the little news yesterday about the Vegas Golden Knights. Russ, they are sharing an affiliation with the St. Louis Blues of the Chicago Wolves of the AHL. Now, this is a little interesting in a sense that I think this is an admission on the part of Vegas that they're not going to load up with 15 free agents just to put them down in the AHL, that they're going to, obviously they're going to be drafting a bunch of 18 to 19-year-olds who are not eligible to play in the American Hockey League unless they're European kids who come over. So they're not going to be able to populate their AHL team with players of their own unless they sign them to free agent contracts or select them in the expansion draft or make trades. So this is an admission that, they're not going to have 25 bodies to pull from.
Yeah, this is a surprising move for me, because they could have spent all the money that they wanted to this year on a ton of players, signed a lot of free agents, and they're not doing it. And the part that will hurt them the most will be the goaltender development. Because let's just take the argument where Chicago, we know how they operate. They want to win. They want to win the Calder Cup every year. They fill the stands. They want to make money. Those fans who go there expect winning. They're not a developmental organization at all. They play the best players. And so let's just say, for argument's sake, Jordan Binnington doesn't get the call this year, and he's one of the goalies you have to choose from. And let's just say Vegas gets, I don't know, Anthony Stolarz. Well, if you go between Binnington and Stolarz, chances are Binnington's going to get the lion's share of those games, and now Stolarz will be sitting in the AHL not playing as much as you want him to while you hope for him to get ready for the NHL. Again, you can come up with Tristan Jarry, same thing. Like if they ended up with Tristan Jarry somehow, well, who's going to play, Tristan Jarry or Jordan Binnington? Best case scenario is you'll get half the games. And that's not as many games as you want Tristan Jarry to play before you want him to be your franchise goalie in a couple of years. And so those are the kinds of problems Vegas is going to have. And I get that they want to draft a lot of their guys, but they had an opportunity to field a team and they didn't want to. So I guess they felt it was cost prohibitive. So now I think they're going to pay a little bit of a price on the developmental curve. I do.
Yeah. It's curious. How long is the agreement for? Do we know?
It's just this year, and it could be for next year. We don't know. Like nobody knows.
And maybe it's a year-to-year thing, and they can actually get a full team eventually. And maybe maybe McPhee is literally thinking, I just don't know what I'm going to end up with at the end of this expansion draft, and how do I get another 30 guys roughly into the organization below the NHL? Is that, and he's doubling down and saying, is that too much to take on right away?
But they had more than this year to do it. Like they've had a long time to do it.
Right.
But he hasn't had any players until now.
No, but he could sign more free agents today. Like they don't have to just be getting Shipachyov and nobody else.
No, I know, but again, he can. But do they want to sign there? Right? Like it's the same argument we just said.
If you ask Russ Cohen if he's at the end of his developmental curve and this is my last chance to make it to the NHL, I'm signing.
That was a couple years ago, Russ.
Yeah.
No, but
Russ, I see your point.
Don't tell my
softball team from an organizational standpoint, what do they want to manage? What do they want to deal with? What's best? And they probably rate the risk factor that you presented from a developmental curve. But as long as it's not some 5-year agreement and that they can pull out, they can go, and maybe they're talking to the AHL, maybe they're figuring out that we need another year just here. I don't think it's a successful route anyways. You need a full farm team. The teams that have split resources in the past have just it's been infighting. It's been bad. It just doesn't work well.
Well, I think one option, like I said, it may be a feeling out process where like next year they can field a full team or they're ready to go that route. But they can, a lot of AHL teams sign players to AHL contracts just to fill in the gaps. I know that or the teams loan players to other organizations. Like I know that the Toronto Marlies had a shortage on defense in March, and Minnesota lent them Alex Goodbranson. Now he was playing either AHL or ECHL and wasn't getting a lot of playing time. So there was developmental time on one side and a need on the other. So what I think Vegas is going to be able to do, if they do have a goaltender they want to develop, there's going to be a team out there in the AHL that needs a goalie that can play, so he can get loaned out, and that is a temporary fix. It's not perfect, but at least the player would get to play and get some experience. So I think that's the way they're going to go.
Okay.
Okay. Now, Russ, the draft is coming up upon us. We're a little over a month away. People are putting out.
People know, in case they don't know. I'll be on the draft floor with Shane Malloy. We'll be live that whole first round on Sirius XM. So that day, you might see me in a suit again. Yeah, I know.
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah.
But you know, and I will be in the risers on the draft floor for Hockey Buzz, following all the trades and all the news. But you know, a lot of people are putting out their mock drafts and their final draft ratings. Now, you know, we won't talk about Nolan Patrick or Nico Hischier because I think everybody's gonna be talking about them, and you know, it's like I think it's overload with those guys. But I think some of the the next level, yeah, right, exactly. Some of the next level I think are getting a little bit ignored, and one player is Gabriel Velarde. Why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, after this weekend, he probably won't be, right, because he's playing for the Windsor Spitfire. They're the hosts for the Memorial Cup. So you get a lot of press when that happens. I want to say I've covered 3 Memorial Cups, at least 2. It's a pretty big deal. My last one was in London, and that was a blowout, right? From a media perspective, there was so much coverage. So they'll get plenty of coverage. Now, Velarde is an interesting one because he is another one of those centers where in the first round, those top 10, there's going to be some really good centers going in the top 10. And he's one of them. He's 6'3", about 200 pounds. The thing about him is this guy can play. He's a multi-dimensional guy. He can play the finesse game, and he could also play a little bit of a rugged game. But his big thing is he's got breakaway ability for that size, which is good. So he occasionally can get on the fast break. He's an excellent passer. So at that center position, no problem at all with the passing. He could score in the high slot. He could definitely handle it there in the crease and play that game, and he's got great hands. And so those are some of the big things he's got. He's almost a point a game in the playoffs. At his age, that's really good. And so everything's going right for him going into this draft. I currently have him ranked, what do I have him, 7th. Could he go a little higher? Yeah, maybe. Let's see what you got in the Memorial Cup, kid.
Yeah, 29 goals, 32 assists for 61 points in 49 games, nearly doubled his offensive totals from last year. And he's a late birthday, August 16th of 99. So, you know, you're getting a young player, and obviously, I mean, I honestly don't think that anybody other than Hischier and Patrick are going to play in the NHL next year. There might be one.
And I'm not guaranteeing they will.
Right. Well, I mean,
I'm not.
Well, if it's okay, and just.
If Philadelphia gets Hischier will have to be so overwhelmingly great in preseason and potentially preseason games for Ron Hextall to do that, because that is not the normal thing for him to do, that the odds are against him, even if he looks great. Provorov looked really good his first year. They sent him back.
Right.
Which now we look at it and say it was the right move. He played all 82 games this year.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to touch on a team in regards to the expansion draft every day. Today is the Boston Bruins. And again, looking at the Bruins, and when it comes to the expansion draft, they have little flexibility because they have 4 players who have no move clauses. So they're locked in with Krejci, Bergeron, and Backes, and Zdeno Chara having to protect them. But after that, Russ, I don't think that the decisions are really tough. I mean, they're obviously going to protect Marchand and Pasternak. And then after that, you know, I think right now the big risk is losing players like Ryan Spooner or Matt Bolesky. I don't see them.
I think they're going the other way.
Okay.
I think they would be happy to get rid of Matt Bolesky's contract.
No. I'm saying that's right. What I'm saying is. Okay. Him or Jimmy Hayes are the type of players that they're going to end up losing, which I don't think they're going to be heartbroken about.
No, they're protecting their defensemen. That's what they're going to do. Even the ones that you don't think are great defensemen, they're going to go. I think they're going to keep as many defensemen as possible, because I think that's what they have to do, because they have an aging Zdeno Chara and they don't have the deepest decor yet. Even adding McAvoy, they still don't have the deepest decor. So I don't think they can afford to lose a defenseman.
Well, I mean, Peter, right, if you look at their defense right now, I mean, if it was me, I would protect Chara. You have to protect Chara. You're protecting Krug. And then for the third one, it's between Adam McQuaid, Kevin Miller, Colin Miller, Joe Morrow. Yeah. I mean, McQuaid is the oldest one at 30, so you probably would protect the youngest one in Colin Miller at 24.
You'll get protected.
Yeah, but that means Kevin Miller or McQuaid are getting exposed. I don't think that's detrimental to that team, especially when they have the number of young defensemen 1 to 3 years away.
No, I don't think it's a big deal. And frankly, as Russ said, they're probably hoping a contractor, they're going to dangle a few out there that they won't mind losing just to make the thing harder to do and almost increase their chances of keeping the guy they want to take. And, again, I don't think Boston's one of those teams where, if they, the call to McPhee comes in and says, look, we want you to take, let's use Jimmy Hayes for an example. You take Hayes, here's a 3rd round pick to do so. And they've got options like that all over the board. And I don't think Boston's going to come out of this too disappointed if there's any disappointment at all.
I think Kevin Miller, I don't think they're going to dangle him. I think he's got the right size. He plays defense. He plays the right role for them. He's played in 17 playoff games, so they're not hesitant in using him. Mm-hmm. He's a plus player for his entire career, playoffs included. I'm not giving him up. It's hard to get defensemen. McQuaid, maybe McQuaid I'll leave hanging out there.
Right, but you're going to have to leave one of the Millers exposed, Russ. It's either if you're protecting 3 and you have to protect Chara, you're protecting Krug, that's number 2, then it's one of the Millers you can protect and leaving McQuaid and the other Miller exposed and Morrow as well. So they're probably going to lose either one of those guys or a Hayes or a Bolesky. I mean, I don't think any one of those losses really hurts them big time. In fact, losing Bolesky with, I think he's got another 3 years left on his contract, making less than $4 million. That might be a benefit for them in terms of clearing out a guy who clearly fell out of favor. At least I thought he did in the second half of the year. But, I mean, we'll see. Rumor chart, Ack has updated it a little bit because I didn't see the name of Joe Thornton on the list yesterday. And, that I think that's an interesting, we'll pick out 3 or 4 of them here before we end the show. Peter, Thornton's been in San Jose for a number of years. The assumption has been that he was going to potentially re-sign with the Sharks for a lesser amount. There's always been talk he loves it in San Jose. X got him on the list with basically a 50-50 chance of going back to the Sharks. But the 2 teams he has out there are the Detroit Red Wings and the Dallas Stars. I don't see Detroit. I know he's from, I think it's around near London. I think it's St. Thomas, Ontario. But I don't see him going to a clearly rebuilding Red Wings team unless they throw ridiculous money at him, and that would just sort of be stupid going into a new building. Dallas, I mean, him as a third center option behind Spezza and Sagan. What do you think about Joe Thornton and what he's got left?
It's interesting. I just think the logical thing is he ends back at San Jose. They reach a fairly amicable deal. The guy still produces. He's still, age is there. We can see it. He's not Joe Thornton of 5 years ago, but he's still Joe Thornton, and he's better than a lot of other guys in the league. In his position of being a 2-3 defenseman now, if that's how he's going to be used, which it seems he would be unless someone does something really shocking. I don't have an issue with San Jose bringing him back, but for anyone else, if you need to plug Joe Thornton in as your second-line center, it's going to cost you money to do it. And is that money well spent? And how long do you have to spend it for?
Yeah.
Right? That's the question. So, I mean, it just sort of comes back to San Jose. I think they work something out. I just don't see it not happening.
Yeah.
I think there's a, less than 5% chance he's leaving San Jose. I really do. I think, like I said, I think he will come in pretty cheap for them, and it'll be a done deal. And he may not sign for a while. He may let other things happen first, including Marleau, just to see what's left for him. Like, he and Marleau may be the last 2 things just to sort of hang out there so they can see what they have left to pay them. And I think that's what will happen.
Yeah, I have a feeling that what's going to happen is because I believe they paid Marlowe and Thornton each around 6.5 or 6.6 million. I would put a wager down that they will get both of them signed for the combined salary of one.
Something like that.
So each of them get like 3.5 or 3.2 or 3.25 for a year or 2 years.
Yeah.
And
there's no GM like Mike Gillis out there willing to throw out $20 million over 2 years because he's got some crazy idea, right? So, exactly. You're Mike. They'll find a happy medium, and it'll buy them a little more time to do what they need to do, and keep fans happy. And it's kind of just like there's no reason for it not to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Another name on the list, and I would say that the odds are pretty good that this guy is going to get moved at some point this summer after many, many years of being the subject of trade rumors, and that's Jordan Eberle of the Edmonton Oilers. Eck has 40% for the New York Islanders, 30% for the Montreal Canadiens, 25% for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and 5% chance of him going back to Edmonton. The one thing I agree about here is the 5% with Edmonton. I think they're going to move him.
Yeah, I think 0%.
You think 0%? The only bad thing is if they would have moved him 2 or 3 years ago, you would have gotten a lot of value for him. And now I think they're trading him at his absolute worst value, Peter, because I don't think he's going to get anything more. I mean, right now I think Edmonton wants to get rid of him for cap relief, and the return is secondary to getting rid of him. Peter?
Yeah, this is something I think Edmonton probably is now wishing they'd done a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's sort of come to the point where Charlie's probably saying, now I got this headache, and there's also Edmonton fans out there and people who watch Edmonton saying Nugent Hopkins should be the one to go. Like, right. And that's the dark horse. What's that?
At the end of the day, he's a center, though, so
he'll
have more value just because of that.
But you got your McDavid, Draisaitl, and then do you need Nugent Hopkins at third? In the way the NHL is changing, yeah, you do. But I mean, there were some rumblings that Nugent Hopkins realized he was going to go way down the pecking order, and he might. I wouldn't be surprised if something happened. I'm not saying it's going to. But if something happened with Nuge, I wouldn't be surprised. But
I think he's secondary to Eberle, though.
Yeah.
And with Eberle, I mean, the Islanders make sense in the sense that you've got to get a winger for John Tavares. If you want John Tavares to sign there long term, I think Garth Snow has to get a winger. And if you can get Eberle for like one of your many, like if they get him for a Pulak or a Calvin DeHaan or a Scott Mayfield, somebody like that might be a deal that benefits Edmonton. And remember, Edmonton is going to be without Sekera for 9 months because of an ACL injury. So I think that even more makes them want to go out and get a defenseman. So if they can move Eberle and get a defenseman back, that makes sense.
What if you sweeten the pot?
You don't want to hear it, but Griffin Reinhart did play in the playoffs, and he may have a big role this year for them. He might.
What if you sweeten the pot with Eberle and you tried to even though Hamanek's stuff is dealt with in terms of his personal stuff, could you pry Hamonic out of there?
We all thought that was possible after all this.
Yeah.
I've not heard any rumblings like that's even possible, and Garth Snow is still there. And if Garth Snow is still there, then I'm going to have to lean towards it's probably not happening.
Right.
Gabriel Landeskog was mentioned a number of times during the year before the trade deadline. Eck has 45% chance of him staying in Colorado, 25 Boston, 15 LA, 15% to the Montreal Canadiens. Was some rumor of interest with Boston, but obviously that's tied to Brandon Carlo, who being a Colorado native. Russ, do you think that the same thing with Duchesne, as you said yesterday, if they kick Sakic upstairs, do you think they're going to stay status quo, or do you think that they're going to do something? I think they have to do something.
No, I think they'll do something, and at the end of the day, Landeskog plays a much tougher game, so his life cycle is not going to be as long in the NHL as a Matt Duchesne, I don't think. I think Duchesne will hold on to his speed longer than Landeskog could crack skulls, besides scoring. He's obviously a talented scorer. But while Duchesne's numbers dipped too, he's still a center.
Yes.
And Landeskog dipped to the point where, 33 points for him is really bad. I mean, this is and his numbers have been dipping.
Peter, so his shot rates, actually. His shot rates have been going down significantly. This is okay. Let me throw this out there. If you're ranking Duchesne and Landeskog, Russ, just by what you said, you're putting Duchesne over Landeskog right now.
Yes.
Okay. I think probably most people would. Is this a case with Landeskog, a buy low, and maybe he gets a little revitalized in a different kind of scenario and stuff? So, I mean, everyone, we've been hearing about how the Habs need a center, and they're in on Duchesne, but, wouldn't Landeskog be just as effective for them?
Here's the thing.
If they lose Radulov, he would be.
Right. If they lose Radulov, he would be. But again, it just seems like Landeskog playing that really physical role, even though he has a great shot, still scores a certain amount of goals from in tight, and his goal numbers have been dropping since 2013, 26 to 23 to 20 to 18. I look at Duchesne and I say, yeah, he had a bad year. I will strike off that bad year to this team's bad year. But Matt Duchesne, I think, when you see him play with elite players like in international competitions, still pretty great. I don't see that out of Landeskog now. I see his trending down, and I think like he's trending down like sooner than someone like Lucic did. But he has more offensive ability than Lucic, but he still plays a tough game like that.
He's a lot younger too. But this is the problem with Joe Sakic or whoever the general manager of the Avalanche is going to be that they face this summer. Everybody's value is down except for Nathan McKinnon. Everybody's value on that team is at its lowest point. Duchesne, Landeskog, Tyson Barrie, Eric Johnson because of injury, Varlamov. The only one that maybe has an upward track is McKinnon and Nico Rand.
But at the end of the day, I got Landeskog where I did because I thought he could be a goal scorer. He's definitely a leader, right? I mean, he's proven that. Mm-hmm. But I thought he could score some goals. So far in his career, he's got 118 goals.
In what, 6 seasons, 5 seasons?
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 full seasons. And,
and
he was injured in one of them. So 5 and
5 is just over 20 a season. It's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not great.
20 is the new 40. 30 is the new 50.
It's not great. What's his salary at?
I think it's around 5.8, something like that.
Yeah.
Way overpaid.
Yeah.
Way overpaid.
So he's trending down. He's overpaid. Bergevin's in on this in a heartbeat.
No. Bergevin's not spending he's not spending that kind of money on him. He's not. I would rather have Radulov back than have
Russ.
Absolutely.
Here you go. Here's the deal. Galchenyuk for Landeskog right there. 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Okay, quick.
I don't think Montreal would do that, though. I think they could do better.
What were you going to say, Peter?
No, nothing. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Peter, you have to admit, that's a lot of money for Gabriel Landeskog.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
It is. But that's what I'm saying. Is some GM going to think of, reclamation project, right? Oh, if I get him in my environment, out of that toxic cesspool of Colorado, a directionless, rudderless ship that no one knows what's going on.
Tell you a place that could
right down to the towel boy.
I'll tell you a place that could use them. If Columbus had divested or did divest of Scott Hartnell, then I could see Landeskog being a younger guy playing that role for them. Then they might be willing to spend that money because the talent level that they have might raise him back to what he used to be. But other than that, I don't think a lot of teams are going to gamble on him for big money. How many more years does he have left?
To be exact, a $5.57 million for 4 more years.
Woo.
That's what he has.
Woo.
That's not a great deal, guys.
Okay.
How old is he? 25?
24.
24.
Probably going to be 25.
2 quick ones. Justin Williams. Eck has 30% chance of going back to the Capitals, 35% chance of the St. Louis Blues, 35% chance of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Russ, I've heard a lot of little whispers regarding Williams, possibly to Toronto if Toronto follows through on trading JVR, because I think they will trade JVR because he's only got a year left in his contract. And, if they need a top 6 winger, they don't want to sign somebody long-term for 5, 6, 7 years. They would go with somebody who can bring in some experience and, Mr. Game 7, and he's still got something left.
Those youngsters that they have, I don't know. Williams' foot speed isn't what it used to be, And actually, Mr. Game 7, boy, there was so much brought up about on the NHL Network. They showed him coming into the building. Look at his stare. Look at everything. He lost. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying this is a different Justin Williams now that we're talking about.
I know he's a complimentary player, but I'm still. Yeah. I mean, I think he proved in the playoffs. I mean, I saw him play in the first round a lot. I saw in the second round not as much, but I still thought he played fantastic.
But can he keep up with the fast Maple Leaf forwards? I don't know.
Yeah, that's not 100% sure. And finally, the one that it's not on the list, but it will be up on the list pretty soon, is Ilya Kovalchuk. Now, Peter, okay. You know, we've had the experience in Winnipeg with Burmistrov going back to the KHL, then coming back. So that's what Kovalchuk is going to do. It's a little different here because I think Burmistrov was in his early 20s and Kovalchuk is 34. He's going to be looking for probably as long a contract as he possibly can for as much money as he possibly can. But Russ has said on previous webcasts that there is a geographical restriction. Do you think he can – make it so that he can go where he wants, or do you think, he's going to have to take the best job available?
If I'm Kovalchuk and I'm 34, I've been out of the grinding NHL for a bit. I'm also looked at a little funky too by some GMs as well. I don't know if I can have restrictions like that if I want to get what I want from a contract, but I'll say this. If he is thinking that way, he's got to take the Yager approach of manageable travel and at a decent salary. Yeah. Like he's going to have to make a concession someplace because he burned some bridges.
Yeah,
but
he has plenty of money. He does.
And he's got money. Oh yeah, he's got tons of it. But he's going to have to really think about what matters most to him. Is he coming back to do the grind to just make a couple extra bucks? Or is he coming back to actually win? That's the curious.
I think he's coming back to win. I think he really did want to win with the Devils. He did, and he was their leader. Here's the thing, and this is the argument that's going on my Facebook page. I talked about this probably last week, Kovalchuk on this, and then talked about it on New York radio too. I'm not advocating the Rangers should get him, but if Ilya Kovalchuk's agent calls and says, hey, he'd like to come here, what do you think you could pay? And they say, we'll give you like $2 million, and if he's willing to accept it, Jeff Gorton's going to be talking to Ray Shero. Now, I know everybody says, there's no way the Devils will trade him to the Rangers. Here's the thing. If it comes down to, let's say, the Islanders, the Rangers, and the Florida Panthers, because that's what's mentioned in this article, although the guy who wrote the article said at the bottom, it's 0% chance it's going to happen with the Rangers. Nothing in the NHL is a 0% chance. Just like him getting traded from the Devils to the Rangers is not a 0% chance because we've seen weird things happen. But here's the way I see it. Ray Shero does not think he is going to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years. The Rangers are still hopeful they can get there. So, as things are just breaking in my house, and so if you think you can get to the Stanley Cup, Ray Shero is going to ask for a certain amount of assets. He may get the best deal from the Rangers compared to some of these other teams, and Devils fans may bristle. But at the end of the day, by the time Kovalchuk either gets to the Stanley Cup with the Rangers or doesn't, the Devils are still going to be just working their way back to respectability. So I think Shero may have to deal with that because I think it's going to be a limited amount of teams that he could deal with, and he's going to look for the best deal. People like Devils fans are like, well, he could just walk away from it. He could, but he already said he's not going to do that, and I don't blame him. At this point, he's looking for assets.
Yeah, and there's a 0% chance he's playing with the Devils because it just doesn't fit with what they're doing right now.
Right.
Why would get an asset for him, trade him to where he wants to go, and get as much as you can for him, and you continue on your rebuild. Why keep him around? If anything, he makes you. I mean, if they're gunning for a high pick in the 2018 draft, having Kovalchuk around just makes the odds of that worse. So,
like in 3 years, where are the Devils going to be? In 3, let's say he signs for the Rangers a 3-year deal, right? Where would he be in 3 years with the Devils? Maybe hoping to make the playoffs? That's it. So how's it really going to hurt the Devils?
Yeah.
It doesn't.
All right, guys. Good show. We will be back tomorrow to talk about the Pens and Sens. I'm going to be making my way to Syracuse, to beautiful downtown Syracuse, New York, for Game 7 of the Calder Cup second-round series between the Toronto Marlies and the Syracuse Crunch. So
what's the dome called there now? It used to be the Carrier Dome. What's it called?
Yeah. I think it's still called the Carrier Dome. All I know is that the mall there is called like Destiny US or Destiny USA. It's like it's the worst mall name in the world. I mean, I can't. I don't get it. So anyway, for Peter Tessier, for Russ
Still an upgrade
Cohen.
above Buffalo, though. Anyhow.
No, it is not. No, sorry, you're wrong. Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.